Imagine a fungus slipping into your bloodstream, hijacking every single neuron and freezing you alive while it knits its own flesh with yours. When it's finished with you, it cracks open your head and flings spores across the room. Well, if you were an ant or a spider, that could be your fate. Thankfully, Ophiocordyceps doesn't yet affect humans. One mutation, I suppose, and it's all on, or so says the very fictional series, The Last of Us, which you've probably heard of. Anyway, welcome to the terrifying, fascinating, slightly creepy world of fungi. Kia ora, I'm Brianne, and welcome to another Microgreens episode, the small, bite-sized, slightly unusual companion to our main podcast. If you missed this week's main episode, it was full cottage core, I guess. Talked everything fungi, what they are, why they're important, how they sort of are the reason life exists at all, and how they might help us unfuck the planet. But today we're going to the dark side, because as you probably guessed from the intro, I like talking about creepy zombie stuff. And it turns out fungi are actually quite interesting. You tend to think of fungi or mushrooms as something you just throw in a stir fry. And they are really good for you, actually. Maybe there's something that ruined your lawn, or I guess if you're particularly fun at parties, something that makes your couch sing to you. But fungi are way more than that. They are way more powerful, and they're quite unusual. They're not plants. They're not animals. In fact, we are closer related to fungi than they are to plants. So you are more like a mushroom than you are like a fern. Now, among the 3 million-ish species out there that we know of, there's some really weird ones. I want to talk about them. The first one is the bleeding tooth fungus. It looks like something out of a medical emergency. Its Latin name is Hydnellum picai. I think that's how you say it. AKA the bleeding tooth fungus, which is really apt because it's disgusting. It's pale and spongy like an overcooked marshmallow, and it oozes thick, blood red droplets of goo, just drips of gore just seeping out. It's not poisonous. In fact, it's technically edible, but only in the way that like cardboard is edible, because you don't want to eat it. It tastes so foul that even squirrels won't eat it, and they'll give anything a go. The red goo is a form of guttation, which is a way that the fungus expels excess fluid. Plants do it too, but less murdery vibes. It's not actually blood, it does just look like it, but it's rich in a pigment called atramentin, which has antibiotic and anticoagulant properties, so it's super interesting for science. Scientists think this bleeding look also probably stops other animals eating it, and I would have to say I think it's pretty effective. Okay, now for my favourite one. I talked about this in the intro. Imagine being an ant. No one really cares about you. You are but a number in a bustling nest. You're going about your day, foraging, picking up leaves at 380 times your body weight, and then you inhale something that smells a bit different, but you ignore it. You've inhaled some spores from the cordyceps fungus, and they are about to ruin your entire life. The spores invade your body, grow through your tissues, and eventually take over your brain. You're still technically walking, but you're not really in the driver's seat anymore. The fungus forces the ant to climb to a very specific height, about 25 centimeters off the ground, and then it makes the ant bite down hard on the stem and stay there. At this point, the fungus erupts out of the back of the ant's head. The ant dies, obviously, and shoots more spores onto the forest floor for the next ant to go by. But the height and the location are very specific. It's actually perfect for maximum spore dispersal. So the fungus gets the best shot at infecting more ants and carrying on this particularly horrific cycle. This is what the series The Last of Us is based on. The cordyceps fungus takes over humans, turns them into various types of zombies. I've never actually seen it, so I'm paraphrasing. And ruins the world, I guess, but it's actually real. That is a very real life example of parasite mind control. And the weird thing is the fungus doesn't even touch the brain directly. It actually secretes chemicals around the brain that changes the way the neurons fire. I feel like that kind of makes it worse. I don't know why. The whole thing is vile. The relationship is ancient. Fossils have actually suggested it's been happening for about 50 million years. But relax. Despite the very beginning of that show, this isn't going to happen to us anytime soon, even if the temperature does continue to increase. Thankfully, it is very specific to a few invertebrate species. If we move past the gross and go to the glowing, because this is very cool. Some fungi glow in the dark. You've probably heard of bioluminescence, right? The thing that if you splash about in some parts of the ocean, it fluoresces. It's kind of the same idea as glowworms or jellyfish. Now, about 100 species of mushroom glow in the dark, including some that are actually native here to Aotearoa. The scientists who named the chemicals involved clearly had a sense of humour, because the chemical is called luciferin, and when in the presence of oxygen and an enzyme called luciferase, it glows. I don't know about you, but the moment I read about this, I started picturing Avatar, which, as an aside, Avatar is just Fern Gully with better CGI and no oil monster. Which, as another aside, you should not Google, because for some reason, a whole bunch of people, and mostly my generation, think that Hexus was their sexual awakening. Hexus was an oil monster, like a brown puddle with an evil face and sang an evil song. I don't know what to do with that information, but You do you, I guess. But they don't glow in the dark to be pretty. They think the glowing helps attract insects, which of course spread spores around. So it's all about reproduction. Because in dense forest environments where mushrooms grow, there's not a lot of air. So insects help spread their spores. Or it could just be an accidental byproduct of some kind of metabolism. We don't really know. You can go and see this glow for yourself. You don't have to have any special equipment or anything, but you do have to be away from the city at night with no torches. But when you do notice it, it's pretty unforgettable. And researchers have managed to extract genes from one of these mushroom species and put it into tobacco plants. So we're going to have glow-in-the-dark plants soon. I don't know what for, but I'm on board. And while you're wandering around in the forest looking for the glow-in-the-dark fungus, you might want to keep an eye out for the next one, which is called dead man's fingers, or Xyleria polymorpha. They look exactly like what the name suggests. Black, swollen, stubby things sticking out of decaying wood, as if someone buried a corpse in a hurry and then forgot to bury the hand. Or like they weren't dead and they tried to get back to the surface. They're totally harmless. One of the types of mushrooms that actually won't kill you. And they're really common on old beach logs here in Aotearoa if you want to go and have a look for them. They belong to the group of fungi called ascomycetes. They're a very big, very important fungal group, and they include everything from penicillin to truffles. It's just the dead man's finger one is kind of creepy and not useful yet. You might have heard of the next one, lion's mane mushroom, because you've probably seen it on social media talking about how it'll make your brain faster and make you be able to solve Sudoku quicker. Not a lot of science to show that, unfortunately. Lion's mane is a mushroom that looks like a lion's mane. It's all tufty, white, shaggy, wig-looking like mushroom. And it's being studied for all sorts of effects like nerve regeneration, cognitive function, maybe even help preventing neurodegenerative diseases. But it's very early days, and the people selling it to you on social media are perhaps overstating those studies a little bit. But I mean, it probably won't harm you. There's 2 active compounds in it, hirosinones and erinacines, and they seem to stimulate nerve growth factor. And that's a big deal because we don't know anything else that does that safely. It's used in traditional Chinese medicine and has been for a very long time, but more recently it's become this trendy supplement in the West. Promising maybe a little bit early. The last one is a bit of a side quest because it's not technically a fungi, but when else do you get to talk about something this weird? Slime mold used to be considered fungi, but they have been moved out. Taxonomy drama. And they're fungus adjacent. But they are weird because they move. They like bubble along a surface like a creepy slime. They give me goosebumps vibes, the creepy books from hundreds of years ago. But they genuinely crawl across surfaces in search of food. Some species can even solve mazes. They've got no brain, but they can remember paths and they will avoid dead ends. They leave a mucus trail, so if they come across their own mucus trail, they know to go back. That's very clever. I know people who can't do that. And we have no real idea how, because obviously they don't have a brain, but they're like sentient custard. Scientists are studying them for all sorts of purposes, things like robotics or computing issues. So maybe our overlords will soon just be brainless blobs. So yeah, fungi are delicious, or so I'm told. I'm actually really allergic to them. And unless we want to do the next episode from the ambulance, I won't be trying them. But mushrooms are medicine, they make food, they are at the forefront of synthetic biology. They are fascinating. They also might help us clean up the planet. But they also bleed and glow, and they have like teeth. They zombify insects. They're way more than just mushrooms, and you should appreciate them way more than you do. Go to team, and I will see you next week talking about oceans, because of course it's World Oceans Day.